And the Sioux Indians had a prayer that said, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." And my father would say to us when we criticize someone, "Better not criticize him until you've been where he is. Do you have any idea what it is to live the way he does? You better not criticize him until you've had that experience." And when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, I watched Walter Cronkite. You remember who Walter Cronkite was?
No, I've never
You
heard the
probably
name.
don't.
No,
He
sorry.
was, he was one of our major news people. And he said after the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. to three members of the so-called black community, he said to them, "When our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line?" Now, he was talking about the killing of JFK. These men shouldn't have had to remember what happened with
Yes,
JFK,
of
and
course.
they shouldn't have been called your people. Who's going to keep your people in line? I was furious, so I changed the channel. And there was Dan Rather saying to two members of the black community, "Don't you black people think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you black people can?" And that did it. That did it. I turned off the television. I rolled up the teepee that I was ironing that my students had made the previous year and that we were going to put in the classroom the next day because we were studying the Indian unit. I threw it into the closet. I went to get my husband's supper because he worked nights at that time. He came home at midnight. He walked in the door. He put his arms around me. He said, "They killed him, didn't they?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What are you going to do, Jane?" I said, "I'm going to teach my students the Sioux Indian prayer tomorrow, and I'm going to arrange to have them walk in the shoes of a child of color in my classroom for a day." He said, "Jane, you can't do that. You'll lose your job." I said, "Gerald, if I lose my job for doing the right thing, I don't want to teach her anymore." He said, "Jane, we've got 4 kids that need to be fed and clothed. You better not do this." I said, "Gerald, I'm going to do this exercise." He was just frantic that I would even think of such a thing because he knew something about the people in Riceville that I didn't know because I had never been around men in a small group in Riceville that would say the ugly things that they did about black people that they said on the way to and from the 25-mile ride that they had to go from Riceville to Charles City where he was working. I had never heard any of those remarks because people didn't talk about that in that way around me because they knew I wouldn't tolerate it. I would not tolerate it. But he had heard it and he knew what would probably happen. So he knew more than I did. I should have listened to him. But if I had, you and I wouldn't be talking today.
Mm.
And that horror that happened would have been seen as the right thing for white people to do.
Imagine a world where the color of your skin dictates your destiny. A world where ignorance breeds hatred and the echoes of history reverberate through the present. Jane Elliott, a woman whose voice is cut through the noise of societal complacency for decades, invites us to confront the uncomfortable truths about race. Prepare to have your assumptions shattered, your biases challenged, and your understanding of humanity fundamentally altered. From the ashes of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, a fire was ignited in Elliott's soul. She speaks with the raw urgency of a witness, a survivor of a society still grappling with its demons. Deliberate silences. She calls them the calculated erasures of Malcolm X and King, the silencing of voices that dared to dream of equality. She asks, what are we so afraid of? And in that question lies the heart of our collective failure. This is not a history lesson. It's a chilling prophecy, a warning from the past that echoes in our present. Picture a classroom, a microcosm of society where the lines of power are drawn not by merit, but by melanin. The fear of becoming a minority, Elliott states, a fear that festers like a wound, driving resistance to racial equity. But Elliott doesn't just dissect the problem. She offers a path to redemption. Beyond skin color, she insists, lies the true essence of humanity. She dares us to reclaim our identities, to embrace our strength, and to forge connections that transcend the superficial. This is not a sermon, it's a blueprint for change, a roadmap to a future where race no longer divides us. Prepare to be uncomfortable, to be challenged, and to be transformed.
I knew that what we were doing was wrong, but I was willing to go along and not make waves until Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And then there was no way any thinking human being could just get on with the day. That wasn't possible. As an educator of third graders in all white, all Christian Riceville, Iowa, I didn't have the right to simply go ahead and teach as though that hadn't happened or as though that was normal or as though that was all right. I couldn't do that.
Mm. And less than 4 years later, Malcolm X was also assassinated. How did you feel about that?
Oh, the same thing all over again. But the difference was Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were of a different attitude toward changing the world. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to do it in a peaceful way. Malcolm X wanted to do it in something very different. But by the time those two men were killed, they had become very much closer together in their attitudes and their behaviors and their words. And the federal government knew that if those two men got together with their followers, they could upset the United States of America, because the two of them were powerful enough that alive, they could have changed this situation, and we wouldn't be talking about it today, because we would have a whole lot less racism in this country if those two men had been allowed to live. But they couldn't be allowed to live. And you have to know that the person who killed Martin Luther King Jr. didn't work alone. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he had to do, and he did what he had to do. And the one who killed Malcolm X the same way. Those two killings were not accidental, and they were not unplanned.
I see. I see. You know, to a certain extent, I kind of agree, because it just seems too coincidental that two people who have a mission which can upset the status quo just accidentally or coincidentally happen to be assassinated. It's just a bit odd.
But they not only had a mission, they had power. They had tremendous amounts of power, because what they were saying appealed to all thinking people. Thinking people agreed with those two men. Once they got together, they agreed with those two men, because those two men were right. They didn't say that black is the only color. They said that color is not what is important. You do not judge a man by the color of his skin.
This is a special week. Does anybody know what it is? National Brotherhood. National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood?
Be kind to your brothers. Be kind.
Okay, be kind to your brothers.
Like you would like to be treated.
Treat everyone the way you would like to be treated. Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
The black people. Who else?
Indians.
Absolutely, the Indians. And when when many people see a black person or a yellow person or a red person, what do they think?
Look at that. Dumb people.
And look at the dumb people. What else do they think sometimes? What kinds of things do they say about black people?
Call them niggers.
In the city, many places in the United States, how are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They're part of this world. They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different color.
You think you know how that would feel to be judged by the color of your skin?
Yeah.
Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah.
The most common thing that I believe you're known for was the test. Can I call it test? The one that you done with the blue eyes and brown-eyed people?
It was an exercise, but people in this country who want to discredit it call it an experiment. It isn't an experiment. It is an exercise in empathy. It teaches people to look at other people and try to walk in their shoes. And I allowed my students to do that the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. I arranged for my students, my all-white students, to walk in the shoes of a child of color for a day in my classroom. It was absolutely terrifying.
How did you come up with that concept?
Well, I learned it from Adolf Hitler.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
He said that blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people. Blue-eyed people should run the world. Hitlerism was Nazism was all about making the world a safe place by removing those who are other than blue-eyed and white and blonde-haired. I was born in 1933, the year that Adolf Hitler and Franklin Roosevelt came to power in their respective countries. So for the first 12 years of my life, from 1933 till 1945, I heard my father ranting about what he was hearing on the radio about what Hitler was doing. So for 12 years, I was indoctrinated with the idea that you cannot treat people this way and still have them feel pleasantly toward you, have them feel as though you're fair, have them feel as though that country that did that was a fair country. We went to war over that in 1941. And my father was just furious for all the years of the war. And from 1933 till 1945, my father was furious about what we were allowing to happen to the people in Europe because of the Germans. And blue eyes were good then, and I had blue eyes. I was lucky. I had blue eyes. But then when I started teaching, I realized, oh my God, eye color has nothing to do with intelligence. Skin color has nothing to do with intelligence. But if you are so suffering from self-imposed ignorance that you believe that nonsense, then you will go along to get along with things that are terribly, absolutely unacceptable. And now we're seeing the same thing happen in this country that happened in 1933. You have to be aware that our former president, Donosaurus T. Rump, has in his bedside table, because that's what he is. He has a face that looks like a rump. He has a mouth that looks like an anal aperture. Every time he opens it, he expresses excrement. Now you have to realize that he has in his bedside table in a locked drawer a copy of the book The New World Order, which contains writings by Adolf Hitler. And if you're as old as I am and you watch what happened from 1933 to 1945, you recognize immediately what it was he was doing. I didn't know until I read the book, When at Times the Mob is Swayed, and found that statement. He has the copy of the New World Order in his bedside table. When I found that, I realized that I wasn't wrong when I thought that he sounded Hitlerian. He is Hitlerian because he believes that Hitler was right and that Mr. T. Rump should be our leader and that we should have an autocracy in this country.
Wow, that's quite interesting because you see a lot of these African Americans like really supporting him, and
that's because they're too young to know any better. If they had been through what people my age in Africa are, they would know that this man is dangerous, that he will take this country and this world over the cliff if we don't put a stop to what he's doing and stop it now. If you've gone through what we went through from 1933 till 1945, you can't possibly not recognize what's going on here. And you can't possibly not see the danger that we're in if we don't put a stop to it.
Wow. Quite interesting. But in regard to the brown eye, blue eye
exercise.
Yeah, you I think you kind of realized I was trying to get. I was trying to figure out.
I know you were. Exercise.
I was trying my best. Don't say experiment.
Don't say experiment. If you want to say experience, you can.
I'm gonna remember now. All I gotta do is remember. Think of the gym, and then the word will come. That will trigger the word exercise.
Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day. I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are. Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people. This is a fact. Blue-eyed people are better than brown-eyed people. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground because you are not as good as blue-eyed people. Who goes first to lunch? Blue-eyed. The blue-eyed people. No brown-eyed people go back for seconds. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not.
Brown-eyed.
Don't you know?
They're not smart.
Is that the only reason?
They'll take too much.
It might take too much. Okay, quiet.
My father used to say, you can't judge a man until you've walked in his shoes. And the Sioux Indians had a prayer that said, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." And my father would say to us when we criticize someone, better not criticize him until you've been where he is. Do you have any idea what it is to live the way he does? You better not criticize him until you've had that experience. And when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, I watched Walter Cronkite. You remember who Walter Cronkite was?
No, I've never heard
of him. You probably don't.
No, sorry.
He was one of our major news people. And he said after the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. to 3 members of the so-called black community, he said to them, when our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? Now, he was talking about the killing of JFK. These men shouldn't have had to be, remember what happened with JFK.
Yes, of course.
And they shouldn't have been called your people. Who's going to keep your people in line? I was furious. So I changed the channel. And there was Dan Rather saying to two members of the black community, don't you black people think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you black people can? And that did it. That did it. I turned off the television. I rolled up the teepee that I was ironing that my students had made the previous year and that we were going to put in the classroom the next day because we were studying the Indian unit. I threw it into the closet. I went to get my husband's supper because he worked nights at that time. He came home at midnight. He walked in the door. He put his arms around me. He said, they killed him, didn't they? I said, yes. He said, what are you going to do, Jane? I said, I'm going to teach my students the Sioux Indian prayer tomorrow, and I'm going to arrange to have them walk in the shoes of a child of color in my classroom for a day. He said, Jane, you can't do that. You'll lose your job. I said, Darrell, if I lose my job for doing the right thing, I don't want to teach her anymore. He said, Jane, we've got 4 kids that need to be fed and clothed. You better not do this. I said, Darrell, I'm going to do this exercise. He was just frantic that I would even think of such a thing because he knew something about the people in Riceville that I didn't know because I had never been around men in a small group in Riceville that would say the ugly things that they did about black people that they said on the way to and from the 25-mile ride that they had to go from Riceville to Charles City where he was working. I had never heard any of those remarks because people didn't talk about that in that way around me because they knew I wouldn't tolerate it. I would not tolerate it. But he had heard it and he knew what would probably happen. So he knew more than I did. I should have listened to him. But if I had, you and I wouldn't be talking today. And that horror that happened would have been seen as the right thing for white people to do. If some person of color isn't smart enough to keep their mouth shut, then we'll have to take him out. And that's exactly what we did. And that's exactly what we're still doing. And I think about George Floyd.
Yeah.
We haven't stopped. We haven't stopped. And we aren't going to stop. Right now, we aren't going to stop because of white fear. White people in this country are so afraid that they are going to be outnumbered color-wise within 25 years that they will do anything to keep that from happening. They can't keep it from happening. We are going to be a numerical minority in the United States of America. Those of us who look like this are going to be a numerical minority in this country within 25 years. It's going to be less than that. You have to realize that, and you have to realize that pale, stale males are scared to death that when people of color get power, they're going to want to treat us the way we have treated them. They aren't going to. I watched the first day I did that exercise, I watched brown-eyed kids who were on the top become aggressive, unkind, unsympathetic, cruel, just the most ugly people I have ever seen in my life. And I couldn't believe what they were willing to do to their blue-eyed counterparts. I sent them home at the end of the day, just didn't like any one of those brown-eyed kids because of the way they had behaved during the day.
What happened at recess? Were 2 of you boys fighting?
Yeah. Russell and John were.
What happened, John?
Russell called me names and I hit him in the gut.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes.
Did you call him brown eyes?
They always call us that.
Yeah.
Greg and all of the
boys they keep calling us brown eyes. They say, come here, brown eyes. And they were calling us blue eyes.
I wasn't. Sandy and Donna were.
Yeah.
What's wrong with being called brown eyes?
It means that we're stupider. Well, not that.
Yeah.
But, oh, that's just the same way as other people calling black people niggers. Yeah.
Is that the reason you hit him, John? Did it help? Did it stop him? Did it make you feel better inside?
Stop Russell.
Make you feel better inside? Did it make you feel better to call him brown eyes? Why do you suppose you call him brown eyes?
Right, because he has brown eyes.
Is that the only reason? He didn't call him brown eyes yesterday, and he had brown eyes yesterday.
On Monday, I reversed the exercise, and I thought, before I did it, I thought, all hell is going to break loose here, because those blue-eyed kids are going to even with the way they were treated on Friday. I was absolutely certain, because the boys in the boys' room when they went to the boys' room before or after recess, said to the blue-eyed people, said to one another what they were going to do to those brownies when Bluey's got on top. So I hated to go to school that day. And I went to school that day. I changed the exercise. Blue-eyed people were on top and brown-eyed people were on the bottom. And none of those blue-eyed kids got even with the brownies. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what in the devil is going on here? Do they not remember what these kids did to them on Friday? I didn't mention it. We had the day as usual, but with blue-eyed people on the top. On Tuesday, before we discussed the exercise at all, each child had to write a 4-paragraph composition telling who Martin Luther King Jr. was, how the child felt on Friday, how the child felt on Monday, and what discrimination is. When they had finished writing, we got in the magic circle, and I said, now, I've got to know. You kids have got to tell me. You blue-eyed kids said you were going to get even with the brownies when you got your opportunity. Why didn't you get even with them? You didn't. You didn't treat them the way they treated you. And those kids almost in a chorus said, because we found out how it feels to be on the bottom, we didn't want to make anybody feel the way we felt the day we were on the bottom. And I thought, oh my God, if this exercise wasn't worth anything up till that moment, what we learned in that moment is the chances are pretty good that what we call people of color, when we're all people of color, but those who are melanaceous and melanotic, meaning have a lot of melanin in their skin, when those people get on top, they aren't going to want to get even because they know what it feels like to have been on the bottom, and they are not going to want to cause that kind of chaos in society once they're the ones on the top. I happen to believe that's true.
What did you people who are wearing blue collars now find out today?
Oh, yes, I know what they felt like yesterday.
I did too.
How did they feel yesterday?
Down.
Like a dog on a leash.
Yeah.
It feels like a chain
them up
wherever you go.
into prison. Like you're chaining them up into prison. Like and you're throwing the key away.
Should the color of some other person's eyes have anything to do with how you treat them?
No.
All right, then should the color of their skin?
No.
Should you judge people by the color of their skin?
No.
When you see a black man or an Indian or someone walking down the street, are you going to say, look at that silly looking thing?
No.
Does it make any difference whether their skin is black or white?
No.
Or yellow?
No.
Or red?
No.
Is that how you decide whether people are good or bad?
No.
Is that what makes people good or bad?
No.
I also saw you done another exercise in the UK. You done one with the UK. I think that was. I remember watching that. I watched that with my mum. God rest her soul. I was a little boy, and I just remember your face sticking in my mind. So to actually be talking to you today, I just gotta say this. It's a big honor. Like seriously, you don't even understand because I remember
this isn't the same face. This isn't the same face. This isn't the same.
It's the same face, man.
I look pretty good at that time. Go ahead.
You still look good now, man. Don't worry. You still look good now. But I remember there was a lady who you had such an impact on her because she could not understand what the exercise was trying to teach her. And she was like, oh, but, they look white because of the palm of their hands. The palm of their hands are white, so they're just like me. And I remember thinking, what the hell is this woman talking about? She's not getting it. Do you get that a lot?
No,
do you get people who just cannot understand that it's real, racism is real?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Several years ago, I did a program for a university in Texas. And I was speaking to a group of probably 500 students and teachers, probably more than that, but at least that. And in the middle of my remarks, a woman stood up and said, and she probably was 45 years old, Mrs. Elliott, I just look for the person's heart. And she was pale. And I said, Madam, if you can see my heart from where you're standing, you need to go down to the local television company and a local hospital and volunteer to be their x-ray machine because you can save them a bunch of money. She said, you don't understand what I'm saying. I said, I understand exactly what you're saying. What you're saying is you have to deny the largest organ inch by inch on a person's body, which is their skin, in order for you to appreciate them or to communicate with them. She said, I don't have to talk this. I said, no, you don't have to take this. You're free to leave. And she did right now. And those kids looked at me like, and I could see them saying, that woman's a bitch. And I said, folks, I know what you're saying. You think I'm a bitch. I am. Make no mistake about this. For me, bitch is an acronym for being in total control, honey. And the girls gasped. Yeah. And the girls all gasped, and then they went, yes! I said, yeah, and the next time some male calls you the B word, you need to say to him, you're out of control, aren't you, darling? But I can take care of that for you. And then you teach him that it's all right for a woman to be in control. And that's where I am. Those kids were just, those women were just absolutely delighted. Nobody had ever said to them, it's all right to be what you are. It's all right to be in control. And you do not have to be controlled by somebody who has a different set of sexual organs. It's all right to be in control. And you need to remember that the first man on earth was probably a woman. Because if it wasn't a woman, where did that man come from?
Well, they say the first human being was Lucy. Well, that's the name they've given her, Lucy, from Ethiopia.
Yeah, well, and Jesus was an Ethiopian Jew.
Well, I think anyone with common sense knows that. Anyone with common sense knows that. I mean, this is something that I tell people a lot. The whole whitewashing of Jesus's image. We know what it was done for. The Roman Empire was losing their grip, and they had to keep things in order. So they whitewashed the man, and they went around the whole world spreading their nonsense. And through years of evolution of all the countries that they once colonized that now become superpowers, they carried on their former colonial masters' lies, and now today we have. What we have. Total ignorance. Yeah. All they had to do was think about that and realize that when you talk about the Bible and you read the Bible and you repeat what's in the Bible, they forget to repeat the verse that says Jesus had kinky, woolly hair and feet of bronze. Yeah. Now that ought to be enough to tell them, but no, they skip over that one to something that they can defend, which will defend their ignorance about human beings. I find it fascinating that human beings, what you've just said and what we're talking about, human beings can't see that, because I've always said to people, is it any coincidence that the Mecca of Christianity is in Rome, i.e. the Vatican? Like, these are people that killed him. They killed Jesus. Yeah. And now they're saying, right, come and find out about the man we killed here, because we love him so much. Like I've always said, if you can't but you have to realize that one of the main differences between people who are melanemic, which means they don't have much melanin in their bodies, in their skin, and melanaceous and melanotic people is when melanemic people come into a new environment, they immediately adjust the environment to fit their needs. When melanaceous and melanotic people come into a new environment, they immediately adjust their needs to fit the environment. So the first thing that happens when a person who is melanaceous or melanotic comes to this country, which we call a melanemic person's country, a white man's country, they immediately adjust their needs to fit the environment. They become as much like white people as they possibly can, which is a huge mistake. Because the first people on earth didn't look like me. This is white. This shirt is white. This skin is not white. There are no white people and there are no black people. We are all shades of brown. You are a shade of brown. I can see the color of your shirt, which is black. It does not match your skin. And my shirt doesn't match my skin because I'm not white. Wow. I'm not ashamed of that. But I do realize that I have some spots that prove to you that I'm a member of your race. Yeah. You're not a member of my race. I'm a member of your race. It's funny.
We have to remember that there's only one race. It's called the human race, and it started in what is now called Africa. It did not start in England, and it didn't start in Ireland, and it didn't start in Washington, D.C. And if we don't stop the way we treat people and the way we teach people, what we think of as the human race is going to be totally obliterated. I'm not going to be here to see it, but within 100 years, living on this planet is going to be extremely difficult because of the climate change, which has been exacerbated by the behavior of people who change the environment to fit their needs. We've been doing it for 400, 500, 600 years. And now those chickens are coming home to roost. It's going to get ugly.
So, you know what, describe to me what you think is going to be like, because I can see you've got a futuristic mind. Describe to me what you prophesize it being like.
Well, I think that and I have proof right now, that it's a good thing that I have some property, like 11 acres, and part of the 160 acres that my father owned. I have ownership, partial ownership of those. And it's a good thing that I do, because people from both coasts are rushing into the Midwest to find places to live, because it's going to be impossible for them to survive what's happening with the coasts as this climate change happens. It's going to be extremely dangerous to live on the coast very shortly.
So do you see people with more melanin being able to survive the new harsh conditions?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because they have the right chemical in their skin to protect themselves from the damaging rays of the sun. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin to protect yourselves from the rays of the sun, you're likely to develop melanoma, which is a skin cancer, a cancer that you get because you don't have enough melanin in your skin to protect yourselves from the damaging rays of the sun. And that melanoma doesn't change, just doesn't stay on your skin. It travels throughout your body. People are dying of melanoma every day in this country, and we refuse to admit that the reason it's happening, most of it's happening to palefaces. And it's happening because we don't have enough melanin in our skin to protect ourselves from the damaging rays of the sun. Now, for a while, the ozone layer wasn't shrinking, but now it is again. And so more and more melanin, more and more sunlight is allowed to reach our skin, and more so-called white people are going to die of melanoma. We've got to put a stop to this. But here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to be there to see it, but you are. In 25 years, you're going to see pale faces pursuing people with dark skin so that they can marry them, so that their children will have enough melanin in their skin to protect them and keep them alive. This is going to happen in your lifetime.
It's happening already.
All of a sudden. What?
It's happening already.
Well, yeah, and it's going to happen more. Yeah, and there's a good reason for it. Because now, finally, some pale-faced people are realizing, oh my God, having no melanin could kill me. Could change how long my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren live. For years, people of color have known that having too much melanin in your skin could cause you to have a shortened life because of the ignorance of self-imposed racism. You have to realize that now we're going to get over the racism and go the other direction. We're going to once again refuse to accept people on the basis of the amount of a chemical in their skin, but now it's going to be refused to accept them because they don't have enough melanin instead of because they had too much. We're turning this, it's just, I know it sounds ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But what was ridiculous was ever calling people black and white. And that didn't happen until the Spanish Inquisition. You know that.
Yes, negro.
Yeah. A man named Torquemada was going to make everybody Catholic. So he went around trying to convert Christians, and those that he didn't think were Christians, he killed. It wasn't until he had killed almost 2,000 people that somebody said to him, you know, a lot of those people you killed were Christians. And he realized suddenly that you can't tell what a person's religion is by looking at them. So then he had to find another way to determine who deserved to die and who deserved to live. So he called people with lighter skin white, which is the color of goodness and purity. He called people with darker skin black, because black is the color of savagery and evil. And that was in the late 1400s and early 1500s. Think about that. We are still living as if we were living in those times. And you need to remember, and I sure you know, that the word race came out of France. Race, to mean a specific group of people, came out of France in 1580.
I didn't know that.
So when somebody says to you, well, what's it? Nobody does. We don't, because we don't think we have to know that. We think we know it all because, after all, it says in the Constitution that black people are 3/4 of a person, isn't it? Yeah. In our Constitution? Yeah, right. Black people, which do not exist. And those are some of the most brilliant people who have ever been statesmen in this country. Thomas Jefferson went along with that. A whole lot of people went along with that because they didn't know any better. Now we know better. It's in the dictionary. Look up the word black in the dictionary. Look up the word race in the dictionary, and it will say France, 1580.
Wow.
That's where it came from. We need to get rid of it. We need to stop defining racism and stop talking about skin color. And I know this is going to sound childish, but listen to it anyway. The cure for racism is in your hand. We have 5 color groups in this country. Consider each of your fingers, of which there are 5, a color group. The white finger is the smallest one. The thumb is the smallest one, so that's the white finger. The first finger is black because it's the one that, whose people have been pointing out racism for us for many, many years. The third finger is the tallest, and it represents the brown race because it's the largest color group on the face of the earth. We're all members of this race. The fourth finger represents the yellow race, which doesn't exist at all, and they weren't called yellow until people from Europe decided they were yellow because that's what we call them. Same is true for the fifth finger, which is the red race. We call the people who came here and invaded this country, called the First Nations people red because they didn't realize that on certain occasions, people here painted themselves red.
Yeah.
So they called them red men.
Yeah.
Now, those 5 groups, those 5 color groups, individually has no power. But if you bring them all together, you have developed something that can destroy and can knock through the walls of bigotry and racism and sexism and ageism. Working all together, we can do this. And every time somebody gives me the finger, I say to them, "Oh, you've been told that that's your brown finger, haven't you?" And they say, "That's not what it means to me." I say, "It's what it means to me. And let me tell you something, Sonny. And what you meant by what you did isn't what's important. What's important is how it is perceived. And when somebody does this to me, I think that person knows that that's the brown race and that's the largest race on the face of the earth."
It's funny what you said about Paris and the word race originating from there, because when I was about 7 years old, I had a teacher, and something else that you said that teacher reminded me of. She kept telling me I'm not black, and she would make me hold up a piece of paper next to her skin, and she'd be like, "Am I white? Am I the same color as the paper?" And I'd be like, "No." And then she would make me like hold up any black object in the room and be like, "Hold that next to your skin, because you're not. And I was so young that I couldn't understand. I thought she was crazy. But then she also told me something as well about what you said about Paris. 2 references from one lady. I look back now and she's a lot more smarter than I ever could have imagined. You know, oh gosh, I'm thinking about her now, man, it's crazy. But she said something about the book, The Planet of the Apes. And it was written by a Frenchman. Now, when she told me that, I was 7 years old, my little mind could not comprehend. She was saying what you were saying about the white race's fear of black people at some point due to natural elements like the sun and that having its toll on the earth, making black people then become in power. And she said it was a metaphoric and a kind of like subliminal insult to the black race by saying these apes are going to take over. And it's funny when they took over, because they took over when the world had been scorched by the sun. So they lived in a desert. If you notice in the movie, they lived in a desert. And that was 7 years old when she told me that. And I remember every time I watched Planet of the Apes, because growing up in the United Kingdom, Planet of the Apes would come on nearly every Christmas, around Christmas period or summer holidays. Every time that movie came on, all I thought was, hold on. I know one of the insults that we do get is that people say you're apes and you're monkeys. So are they trying to say that's us? Yeah. And
yeah,
it's just always stuck with me, like, hold on. Yeah. These people, why they call, like, where did that concept come from? The whole calling black people apes and monkeys. Where did it come from? Do you think you know?
From Torquemada. He said, people who have darker skin are black, which is the color of savagery and evil. People who have lighter skin are white, which is the color of goodness and purity. I'm not good and pure, and you're not savage and evil. And it's time for us to stop allowing people to use those terms to describe us.
Yeah.
We are all shades of brown.
You know, it's so interesting. You know, one thing I always wanted to know, and I think I know the answer to it, but because we're having that conversation, I'm going to ask you, where do you think humanity became so evil to themselves? At what point did we start to make these divisions and these sections and these groups and say, right, I feel like harming other people that don't know nothing like me?
You want to know? You really want to know? I think it started with religion. In fact, I know it started with religion. Certainly racism began as a result of religion. And it is perpetrated and perpetuated by religion to this day. The most separate hour on Sunday in the United States of America is from 11 to 12 on Sunday morning. That's the time when we all go to worship. Those of us who believe in Christianity go and sit and watch a minister with a picture of Jesus behind him that looks nothing like what Jesus is described as being in the Bible. And we hear the most ridiculous nonsense come out of that minister's mouth, and we don't question. We stand up and sing the anthem and kneel when we're supposed to, do whatever we're supposed to do, and then go out and cheer a group of melanaceous and melanotic men playing football and smashing one another for money. And it doesn't occur to us that we have reinstated slavery with football. It doesn't occur to any of us. Well, see, I know that that's not something anybody wants to hear, because then they'll say they get a lot of money. They get a lot of money for playing that game. No, they get money as long as they are young enough to stand up to it, and then they're drummed out, and then they have to find a way to live for the rest of their lives with their brains rattled. And I remember reading about a fabulous football player, and I can't remember who it was, a black man, and on Monday morning, when he gets up to go downstairs, he has to go downstairs by sitting on the steps and going down the steps because his hips and his knees are in such bad shape that he can't walk. And I don't think that he's the only one. I think that what we have reinstituted with our national football business is slavery. And we don't want to call it that. And I know that. But I was also in college, and I watched football players, black football players, taking courses that any kindergartner could pass.
Just so they could get scholarships.
They got the money, they got their hours, they got their degrees, and they played football. And those of us, and then when I got into teaching, the kids who were wrestlers, I was teaching at the junior high level, and one of them did a lousy job in the class that I was teaching. And I said, look, I took the report cards to the principal. I said, this kid is not going to pass. He said, you can't do that. He said, why not? He said, well, if you do, you won't be able to wrestle on Friday night. I said, if you want this kid to pass this course, you sign his report card, because I'm not going to. He didn't do the work. He doesn't deserve to have a passing grade. He needs to take the course over. I'm flunking him. He signed the report card, but he didn't give him an F. So the kid was available on Friday night, or whatever night it was, that they wrestled. He was a good little wrestler. That didn't teach that kid a thing about what he shouldn't learn what he should have learned. He learned that if you're tough enough, if your physical being is good enough, you don't have to know anything. You don't have to have a whole lot of intelligence. If you just know how to play this game just right. That's not education, and that's not even indoctrination. That's not even intimidation. That's utilization of a person's body for your own benefit and your own welfare.
Yeah. Even the way they trade them is very similar to the slave trade. The way they trade them and sell them and come club to club. And it's very awkward. It's very awkward. But because the money is a lot, people overlook that concept, you know?
But the people who are getting hurt while they're playing that game don't overlook the concept. They know what they're being used. I will never forget those 3 black men at the Olympics several years ago when they were handing out the medals, and those 3 guys stood there with their fists raised like this. And I thought, I know that's not what they're thinking, but if we could just all get together, we could put a stop to this nonsense. And I know that is what they were thinking, but it's what I was thinking. They had the courage to do that in that society at that moment. Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
Now, no, because you're still thinking of what you're going to say instead of what I'm saying. Now, getting right along.
I heard what you were
Well,
saying.
you're doing it
I
again.
understand what you were
You're
saying.
doing it again.
I don't care.
You're doing it
because
again.
It's wrong.
You're
And you
doing it again.
Persecuted her for standing
You're
out.
doing it again.
Persecuted him for standing out. The only change that ever happens is when people stand out, and I have to stand back too.
Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. Are you in any physical danger here? Are you in any physical danger here? Is that girl in any physical danger here? Emmett Till was hanged by his neck after he was beaten almost to death, simply because he made a statement to a white woman.
What is it like for you out in the world? Do you get a lot of like people upset with your teachings, upset with your exercises? Do people insult you? Do people try to get physical with you? Because what you're saying for a lot of ignorant people is too much.
Well, absolutely. For people who consider themselves knowledgeable and knowing it all, I am really a challenge. Yeah, I've been threatened with death lots of times. That's the way it goes. When I walk into an airport, immediately people turn and look at me, and they start to whisper. Some man will come up to me while I'm sitting there reading a book, waiting for a plane. Some man will come up and stand over me and say, "You're that woman that did that blue-eyed, brown-eyed thing." I say, "Yeah, what do you want to know?" "I want you to know." I said, wait a minute. There's something I have to do. And I go to the ladies' room. He's not a lady. He won't come to the ladies' room. I don't have to worry about that.
Well, in this day and age, he probably will.
Well, I doubt that very much. He doesn't really want to get into a war of words with me because he's going to lose. And he knows he is, because he doesn't know what I know. Men do not know what women know because you've never had to.
True.
Most of you have never had. I know men who are melanaceous and melanotic have put up with a lot. But women who are melanaceous and melanotic have put up with twice as much.
Definitely, because they're women. Just being a woman alone.
Right, they've taken sexism, they've taken ageism, they've taken racism. And they have to either go along to get along or be seen as the B word. And because I'm white, I can do what I do and get away with it. If I had been a melanaceous or a melanotic woman the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed and did that exercise in my classroom, I would surely have lost my job and I might have lost my life.
Yes, 100%.
I know where my power comes from, and it comes from the ignorant people who think that the lighter you are, the brighter you are. So I let them have their way, and then I try to teach them how wrong they are. Skin color is not an indicator of intelligence, and we've got to get over the idea that it is.
Okay, so my last and final question for you is, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered? What do you want everything that you've done to result to?
Oh, I don't think much about my legacy, because being what I am and what I've done, if I hadn't done what I did, I'd have no right to claim to be what I am. I claim to be a Christian. If I had let the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. just go, that would have meant that I didn't believe in anything I learned in all the years that I learned about Christianity. There's no way I could be a moral human being and allow that killing to go unrecognized, or to be, as some of the fathers did, to be approved of. I have to be the kind of person who sees what's wrong and does something about it, instead of the kind of person who sees what's wrong and says, I'm not going to put my head over the parapet, somebody will try to shoot it off. I'm going to maintain my quiet, I'm going to maintain a low profile and let somebody else deal with the problem. If enough of us do that, the problem will continue. We've got to stand up and be counted. We've got to stop going along to get along. And that's going to be my legacy. They're going to say she was always talking about something. She couldn't keep her mouth shut. They're absolutely right. And they can't keep my mouth shut because I'm white and I'm old and I'm a woman, so I can get away with it. If I were a young so-called black teenage female, I couldn't get away with saying what I'm saying today. You know that, and I know that. And you and I are 30th to 50th cousins because we are members of the same race. And so is everybody else on the face of the earth, one of my 30th to 50th cousins. I will not tolerate one of my cousins being treated unfairly because of somebody else's ignorance about skin color. I won't tolerate it. I will not tolerate the intolerable. And that's what Elie Wiesel said. We must not tolerate the intolerable. If something is intolerable for you, it's intolerable for me. And I will do what I can to put a stop to it.
Powerful. Powerful. Jane Elliott, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your knowledge. Thank you so much for breaking down your exercise. Thank you so much for breaking down your thoughts. And thank you so much for being the person that you are. Because like I said, I was a little boy watching your exercise in the UK with my mum, God rest her soul. And my mum she was touched. She was touched. And I remember sitting with her and I was just as touched, like, whoa. So it's been an honor actually speaking to you directly, you know.
But the honor is mine. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for asking good questions and for listening to the answers. Not everybody does.
I can imagine. Thank you so much. Jane Elliott, thank you for your
You're welcome.
time.
You're most welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you.
All right, I certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure she will.
Don't start no wars now.
I got kicked out of the Methodist Church in Osage, Iowa for calling God the Mother. The minister came out and said, could you do me a favor? I said, sure, I will if I can. What would you like? He said, will you find another place to worship on Sunday morning? I said, I can do that. So I did, but I went right on calling God the Mother because God is a spirit and has neither gender nor color. And if you want to call God he, I want to call her God she. Works for me. Okay, thank you very much.
Elliott's stark assertion that the assassinations of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were not mere acts of isolated violence, but rather meticulously planned efforts to silence revolutionary voices reveals profoundly disturbing truth about the lengths to which those entrenched in power will go to maintain their dominance. The potential alliance between these two figures, initially perceived as ideologically disparate but ultimately united in their unwavering pursuit of social justice, was viewed as an existential threat to the established order. This historical context illuminates the insidious nature of systemic oppression and underscores the enduring importance of safeguarding dissenting voices and challenging the structures that perpetuate inequality, even in the face of formidable opposition. Elliott's remarkable ability to draw incisive parallels between past atrocities, such as the rise of Hitler and the horrors of the Holocaust, and the troubling trends of contemporary societal issues serves as a chilling and urgent reminder of the cyclical nature of history. Her formative experiences during this period of unprecedented darkness instilled in her a profound understanding of the imperative to treat all individuals with dignity and respect, a lesson that remains tragically relevant in our present context. Her warnings against the insidious creep of ignorance, which she likens to the oppressive conditions of the 1930s, demand a critical and unflinching examination of the forces that threaten to erode the foundations of democracy and undermine the pursuit of social justice. Elliott's penetrating analysis of the fear of becoming a minority as a primary driver of resistance to racial equity sheds light on the complex psychological mechanisms that perpetuate prejudice. This fear, often deeply rooted in a desire to maintain existing power structures and preserve perceived privileges, manifests in a spectrum of behaviors, ranging from subtle biases and microaggressions to overt acts of discrimination and violence. Understanding the intricate workings of this fear is crucial for dismantling the formidable barriers to racial equity and fostering a truly inclusive and equitable society. The disturbing experiments that reveal the alarming ease with which children, our future, readily adopt cruel behaviors based on perceived superiority and racial hierarchies, serve as a stark indictment of the insidious nature of prejudice and the urgent need for early intervention. These findings underscore the profound impact of societal conditioning and the imperative to cultivate empathy and understanding from a young age. Education, in its broadest sense, plays a pivotal role in countering these harmful tendencies and shaping a generation committed to justice and equality. Elliott's unwavering insistence that judging individuals based on the superficiality of skin color is fundamentally unjust and irrelevant strikes at the very heart of the problem. Skin color, a mere biological variation, has no bearing on a person's character, intelligence, or intrinsic worth. The persistent failure to transcend these superficial traits perpetuates harmful misconceptions about race and identity. fueling a destructive cycle of discrimination, marginalization, and inequality. Eliot's profound emphasis on reclaiming authentic identity, on recognizing the multifaceted nature of human beings beyond the superficiality of appearance, is a powerful message of empowerment. By challenging the reductive notion of viewing individuals solely through the lens of their physical attributes, she advocates for the cultivation of deeper, more meaningful connections and a more nuanced understanding of human identity. Her impassioned encouragement for women to embrace their strength and agency is particularly relevant in a society that often seeks to limit and define them based on outdated and oppressive stereotypes. Eliot's assertion that race is a social construct, a product of historical oppression and misguided beliefs, represents a fundamental challenge to the very notion of racial hierarchy. The undeniable fact that humanity originated in Africa underscores the imperative for unity beyond perceived racial differences. The historical figures who wielded skin color as a tool for categorization and judgment operated under deeply flawed assumptions that continue to have devastating consequences in our present context. Eliot's powerful metaphor of fingers representing diverse racial groups, emphasizing their collective strength when united, is a compelling illustration of the transformative potential of unity in the fight against systemic racism. By recognizing the unique historical and social connotations associated with each racial category, we can foster a greater awareness of the need for collaboration, solidarity, and collective action to dismantle the structures of oppression. Eliot's incisive critique of the role of religious institutions in perpetuating divisions among humanity and promoting destructive stereotypes demands a critical and unflinching examination of the influence of religious interpretations on racial attitudes. Eliot's stark assertion that professional sports, particularly football, perpetuate modern forms of exploitation through the systemic abuse of athletes, particularly those from minority backgrounds, is a powerful indictment of the entertainment industry.
The celebration of athletic prowess often comes at the expense of the physical and mental well-being of the players, many of whom are denied adequate education and support, leading to devastating consequences after their careers end.
The pursuit of social justice often demands immense personal sacrifice, requiring resilience, unwavering commitment, and a profound belief in the possibility of a more just and equitable future. Eliot's incisive discussion of gender, race, and the complex interplay of discrimination highlights the multiple layers of oppression faced by women, particularly those of color. The insidious false association between skin color and intelligence, often compounded by sexism and other forms of prejudice, demands a greater awareness of the intersectional nature of oppression and the urgent need for a unified approach to dismantling all forms of injustice. Eliot's powerful advocacy for mutual intolerance of intolerance, suggesting that what is unacceptable to one should be unacceptable to all, is a compelling call for solidarity and collective action. Her emphasis on the indispensable role of listening and understanding in fostering meaningful dialogue underscores the urgent need for empathy, compassion, and a willingness to challenge our own biases in the pursuit of justice. Eliot's profound discussion of the impact of current societal attitudes towards race on future generations underscores the urgent need for transformative education in combating racism among young people. Jane Eliot's enduring message is a powerful and transformative call to action, demanding that we confront the insidious forces of ignorance, embrace the transformative power of unity, and build a future where race no longer divides us and the inherent dignity of all human beings is universally recognized and upheld. Her decades-long crusade against racism serves as an inspiration and a reminder that the pursuit of social justice requires unwavering commitment, unwavering courage, and an unwavering belief in the transformative power of education to reshape hearts, minds, and the very fabric of our society.